Time passes for everyone, but some people seem to defy it. You know, my dears, when I was young, I thought aging meant sitting still in a rocking chair, looking out the window. But look at me now, at 75 years old, and I still feel an energy that surprises me every day. I remember when I turned 60. My granddaughter asked me if I was going to stop working in the garden. I laughed and said, "Honey, the plants don't know it's my birthday. They still need me." And off I went to take care of my tomatoes. The secret, I discovered, isn't in trying to look young, but in keeping a young spirit. Every day, I wake up early, do my light exercises, read the newspaper, and plan what I'm going to do. Sometimes it's simple things like calling a friend or baking a cake. Other times, I decide to learn something new, like when I started taking painting classes at 70. Of course, my body isn't the same as it was 40 years ago. My back complains a bit more, and my knees make funny little noises. But you know what? That doesn't stop me from living. It just makes me find new ways to do the things I love. 2. Most people over 70 lose 10 essential skills for a full and energetic life. It's true that with age, some things become more difficult, but we don't have to accept this passively. I'll tell you a secret. Staying active is the key. When I turned 70, I noticed it was getting harder to button my shirt. My fingers seemed less agile. Instead of giving up and asking for help, I decided to practice. Every day I would take buttons and sew them onto an old piece of cloth, practicing buttoning and unbuttoning. It seemed silly at first, but after a few weeks I noticed the difference. Another thing I noticed was the difficulty in remembering names. This bothered me a lot, especially at gardening club meetings. So, I started creating funny associations. Mrs. Rosa, for example, always wore a flowery hat, so I imagined her with a huge hat made of roses. I never forgot her name again. The point is, we may lose some skills, yes, but we can also work to maintain them or find creative ways to overcome difficulties. It's like tending a garden. It needs constant attention, but the results are wonderful. 3. The real challenge of aging is not just living longer, but how to live with quality. Oh, my friends, living long is good, but living well is even better. When I was younger, I dreamed of reaching 80, 90 years old. Now that I'm close to that, I realize that what's important isn't the number, but how you feel. I have a neighbor, Mr. John, who's 85. He spends most of his time at home, watching TV. He rarely goes out, rarely smiles. On the other hand, there's Mrs. Mary, at 78. She does water aerobics 3 times a week, participates in the church choir, and still does volunteer work at the animal shelter. Which of the two do you think is enjoying life more? You see, age is just a number. What matters is how you fill your days. For me, living with quality means waking up with a purpose. It can be something simple, like watering my plants or calling a friend I haven't seen in a while, or it can be something more ambitious, like planning a trip or starting a new hobby. It also means taking care of my health, of course. I have regular checkups, take my medicines properly, and try to eat well. But I don't deny myself a sweet treat now and then. After all, life is meant to be savored. 4. Stoicism teaches how to face challenges with serenity and purpose. Have you heard of Stoicism? No, it's not related to being stocked up somewhere. It's an ancient philosophy that has helped me a lot in recent years. I remember when my arthritis started to get worse. At first, I was very frustrated. Why is this happening to me? I thought. But then, I read about the Stoics. They taught that we can't control everything that happens to us, but we can control how we react. I started thinking, okay, I have arthritis, I can't change that, but what can I do about it? Instead of complaining, I started doing exercises recommended by the doctor. I bought kitchen utensils adapted for hands with arthritis, and you know what? The pain didn't go away, but my attitude changed completely. The Stoics also talk about living with purpose. This made me think, what is my purpose at this stage of life? I decided that I want to be a good example for my grandchildren and help my community. Now, even on days when arthritis bothers me, I get up thinking about how I can contribute. This philosophy taught me that happiness doesn't depend on perfect circumstances, but on how we face challenges. It's like that old story of the glass half full or half empty. We can complain about the empty half or enjoy the full half. I choose the second option. 5. The video explores 10 essential skills that many elderly people can't maintain, but which can transform their lives. When I watched this video, I was impressed by how many of these skills I had neglected without realizing it. I'll share some of them, and how I've been working to maintain them. First, physical independence. This doesn't mean being an Olympic athlete. It's about being able to do daily tasks on your own. I started doing small exercises at home, getting up from the chair without using my arms, going up and down stairs, carrying groceries. It was difficult at first, but I improved a lot with practice. Another important skill is accepting changes. I remember when I had to wear glasses for the first time. I was upset, thought it made me look old. But then I thought, well, at least now I can read my favorite books again. It's all a matter of perspective. A growth mindset is also crucial. It's never too late to learn something new. I started taking computer classes at the local library. At first, I barely knew how to turn on the computer. Now, I video chat with my grandchildren. Appreciating small pleasures is another skill that makes all the difference. Before, I was always in such a rush that I hardly noticed the world around me. Now, I make a point of savoring every sip of my breakfast coffee, listening to the birds singing, feeling the sun on my face, maintaining social connections, cultivating gratitude, managing stress, taking care of mental health, practicing resilience, and maintaining a sense of purpose complete the list. Each of these skills is like a muscle. The more we exercise it, the stronger we become. 6. The story of Don Matthew exemplifies how to age with dignity, maintaining physical independence, accepting changes, and cultivating a growth mindset. Don Matthew reminds me a lot of my friend Charlie. Charlie is 80 years old and is an inspiration to all of us in the neighborhood. He still takes care of his own garden, does his shopping and even helps younger neighbors with small repairs. Charlie's secret: he never stopped. When he retired at 65, instead of sitting down and resting, he enrolled in a gardening course. I always wanted to have a beautiful garden, he told me, and now I have time to learn how to do it right. Charlie is also great at accepting changes. When he started having trouble hearing, he didn't hesitate to use a hearing aid. It's better to hear with help than not hear at all, he jokes. What I admire most about Charlie is his constant curiosity. He's always reading something new, asking about things, wanting to learn. Last week, he asked me to teach him how to use the smartphone he got from his grandchildren. Seeing his eyes light up when he managed to send his first text message was amazing. Charlie, like Don Matthew, shows that aging with dignity is not about fighting against age, but embracing it with grace and wisdom. It's about adapting, continuing to grow, and above all, staying active and engaged with life. 7. Don Matthew faces the challenges of aging with calm, resilience, and wisdom, following Stoic principles. Don Matthew's attitude reminds me of how I changed my own approach to aging. A few years ago, I would get frustrated with every new wrinkle, every new little ache. But then, I started thinking differently. One day, I woke up with a back pain that wouldn't go away. Instead of despairing, I thought, okay, this is happening. What can I do about it? I went to the doctor, started physical therapy, and adapted my exercises. The pain didn't go away completely, but I learned to live with it without letting it dominate my life. This change in perspective spread to other areas. When I realized my memory wasn't as sharp anymore, instead of worrying, I started using strategies to compensate. I make lists, use alarms on my cell phone, and created the habit of always keeping things in the same place. Wisdom lies in understanding that not everything is under our control, but our reaction always is. When my eyesight started to fail, I couldn't prevent it, but I could choose to wear glasses and continue reading my favorite books. Resilience, for me, is like a tree that bends in the wind but doesn't break. Challenges come, but we adapt and move forward. It's about falling and getting up always. 8. He maintains intellectual curiosity, physical activity, and finds joy in small pleasures. Keeping the mind active is as important as keeping the body moving. I discovered this when I started doing crossword puzzles every day. At first, I could barely finish one. Now, I do one every day at breakfast. As for physical activity, we don't need to run marathons. I started with short walks around the block. Today I take a 30-minute walk every day in the park near my house. Not only does it keep me active, but it's also a great opportunity to meet neighbors and chat a bit. And the small pleasures? Oh, these are the spice of life. I learned to appreciate the smell of coffee in the morning, the warmth of the sun on my back, the sound of rain on the window. Just yesterday, I spent almost an hour watching a hummingbird in the garden. What a fascinating little creature. I also rediscovered the pleasure of reading. I pick up a different book from the library every week. Sometimes it's a novel, sometimes a history or science book. Keeping curiosity alive is like keeping the youth of the spirit. 9. His secret to a full life lies in simple daily decisions, focusing on body, mind, and meaningful relationships. The secret to a full life isn't in grand gestures, but in the small decisions we make every day. For me, it starts early, when I decide to get out of bed with a smile, grateful for another day. I take care of my body with a simple morning stretching routine. Nothing complicated, just a few minutes to wake up the muscles. Then, I have a healthy breakfast, usually a bowl of oatmeal with fruit and a little honey. For the mind, I always set aside time for stimulating activities. Sometimes it's a puzzle. Other times I read an interesting article or watch a documentary. The important thing is to keep the brain working. Relationships are fundamental. I make a point of keeping regular contact with friends and family. I call my sister every Wednesday. On Sundays, I have lunch with my children and grandchildren. And once a month I meet my old friends for a card game. I also try to do something for others. Sometimes it's something simple, like helping a neighbor with groceries or donating clothes I no longer use. Doing good makes us feel good. 10. The key to aging well is to live each day with gratitude and purpose, preparing for the future with small choices in the present. Living with gratitude changed my life. Every night before going to sleep, I think of 3 things I'm grateful for that day. Sometimes they're big things, like a surprise visit from a grandchild. Other times, they're simple things, like having managed to bake a tasty cake or having had a day without pain. As for purpose, I discovered that it doesn't need to be something grandiose. My daily purpose is to be a little better than I was yesterday. This can mean learning something new, helping someone, or simply being more patient with myself. The small choices of the present build our future. When I choose a fruit instead of a sweet, I'm taking care of my future health. When I decide to take a walk instead of staying on the couch, I'm investing in my mobility for the coming years. I remember when I decided to start saving a little money every month for a trip. It seemed like little at first, but after 2 years, I was able to visit my hometown. 11. Resistance to aging is not about denying limitations, but adapting to them with wisdom. You know, my dears, for a long time, I fought against aging. I wanted to do everything exactly as I did at 30. The result? I ended up frustrated and sometimes even hurt myself. That's when I learned a valuable lesson. True strength lies in adaptation, not denial. I remember well the day I realized I could no longer climb the ladder to change the ceiling light bulbs. I was upset, thinking I was losing my independence. But then, I had an idea. Why not change all the bulbs to long-lasting LEDs? That way, I wouldn't need to change them so often. And for the few times I would need to, I asked my teenage grandson to help. He was happy to be useful, and I gained extra time with him. Another adaptation I made was in the garden. I loved taking care of my plants, but staying crouched for a long time started to bother my back. Instead of giving up my hobby, I created hanging gardens and bought long-handled tools. Now, I can continue gardening without discomfort. Even in the kitchen, I made changes. I love cooking, but cutting vegetables became more difficult with arthritis. Solution? I bought a food processor. Not only did it make meal preparation easier, but it also encouraged me to try new recipes. The point is, for every limitation, there's a possible adaptation. It's like a puzzle. Sometimes we need to rotate the piece several times until we find the perfect fit. But when we find it, the feeling of accomplishment is wonderful. 12. Don Matthew understands that suffering is optional, even in the face of physical pain that aging can bring. Ah, this is a lesson that took me a while to learn, but it completely changed my life. You see, pain and suffering are not the same thing. Pain is often inevitable, especially as we get older. But suffering, that's a choice. I had a clear example of this a few years ago when I developed arthritis in my knees. At first, the pain made me irritable and depressed. I spent the day complaining and feeling miserable, until one day, talking to my doctor, he told me something I never forgot. The pain is real, but suffering is how you choose to deal with it. I started reflecting on this. Yes, my knees hurt, but I could still do many things. I began to focus on what I could do, not on what I couldn't. Instead of lamenting that I couldn't run anymore, I celebrated being able to take light walks. When the pain was strong, instead of getting frustrated, I used it as a reminder to do my physical therapy exercises or apply a hot compress. I also adopted mindfulness techniques. When the pain appeared, instead of panicking, I observed it with curiosity. Ah, there it is again, I thought, without judgment. This helped me not to identify so much with the pain. Another thing I learned was the importance of humor. We laugh a lot at home about my musical joints, the crackles my knees sometimes make. Turning something unpleasant into a reason for laughter relieves a lot of tension. Of course, there are bad days, days when the pain is stronger, when it's hard to keep a good mood, and that's okay. The important thing is not to let these days define our entire life. They're just days, and better days always come. 13. He values deep connections with other people, which help maintain emotional vitality. You know what I discovered to be the true elixir of youth? Genuine human connections. There's nothing that makes me feel more alive than a good conversation with a dear friend or a tight hug from a grandchild. I confess that after I retired, I felt a bit isolated. I missed the daily interaction with co-workers. That's when I realized I needed to make a conscious effort to maintain and create new connections. I started by joining a reading group at the local library. At first, I was nervous. It had been a long time since I'd met new people, but soon I found myself involved in lively discussions about books, sharing opinions and listening to different perspectives. These monthly meetings became a highlight of my calendar. I also rediscovered the joy of writing letters. Yes, real letters on paper. I started exchanging correspondence with an old friend who moved to another city. There's something special about receiving a letter, seeing the familiar handwriting of someone dear. It's like a small gift arriving by mail. With family, I made sure to create traditions. Every Sunday afternoon is family game day. Sometimes it's a board game, other times it's cards or even video games my grandchildren love teaching me. The important thing isn't the game itself, but the time we spend together, laughing, talking, and creating memories. Another thing I did was volunteer at a local animal shelter. Taking care of the animals not only gives me a sense of purpose, but also connected me with other people who share the love for animals. We made friendships that go beyond volunteer work. We meet for coffee, celebrate birthdays together. And you know what? The more I open myself to these connections, the more energized I feel. It's as if each interaction, each exchanged smile, each shared story renews a bit of my vital energy. Even on days when my body is tired, my heart feels light after a good chat with a friend. 14. Don Matthews' final secret is that true youth doesn't reside in the body, but in the spirit, and this can remain young through daily choices. My dears, if there's one thing I've learned in all these years, it's that age is much more a state of mind than a number. Look, I know people in their 30s who act like they're 80, always complaining and unwilling to try new things, and I know octogenarians who have more energy and enthusiasm for life than many young people. The secret, it's in the choices we make every day. Each morning when I wake up, I have a choice. I can focus on the pains and limitations that age has brought, or I can concentrate on the possibilities that the new day offers. I choose the second option. I keep my spirit young in various ways. First, I never stop learning. Recently, I started taking watercolor painting classes. I'm terrible at it, but I have a lot of fun. The point isn't to be good, it's to enjoy the learning process. I also make a point of staying updated with the world. I read the newspaper every day, watch documentaries, and love talking with my grandchildren about the latest in technology. I don't always understand everything, but I'm fascinated by the possibilities of the modern world. Another important thing is maintaining a sense of humor. We laugh a lot at home, even and especially at our own limitations. When I forget where I put my glasses, usually on my own head, instead of getting frustrated, I make a joke out of it. Curiosity is another fundamental aspect. Whenever I hear about something new, be it a recipe, a place, or an idea, I get excited to explore. Last month, I tried Thai food for the first time. It was an explosion of flavors I had never experienced before. I also believe it's important to stay active in the community. I participate in neighborhood meetings, give my opinion, suggest improvements. This makes me feel part of something bigger, connected with the people around me. And we can't forget about love. Love for life, for family, for friends, for oneself. Love keeps us young, gives us reasons to smile, to get out of bed every morning with enthusiasm. Finally, I think the secret is to never stop dreaming and making plans. I always have something to look forward to. It could be a trip, a new project, or simply Sunday lunch with the family. Having something to look forward to keeps us focused on the future, not stuck in the past. Remember, my dears, we may not control the aging of the body, but we have total control over the youth of our spirit, and this youth, this can last forever. Well, my friends, I hope these reflections and experiences can help you see aging in a more positive and enriching way. Each day is a gift, an opportunity to learn, grow, and love. Let's make the most of them, with gratitude, curiosity, and joy. After all, life is too precious to be wasted worrying about age. Let's live and live well, regardless of the number of candles on our birthday cake. 15. Sarah's journey, embracing change and finding new passions. Let me tell you about my friend Sarah. She's a perfect example of how embracing change can lead to a fulfilling life, no matter your age. Sarah was a high school English teacher for 35 years. When she retired at 62, she felt lost. Her whole identity had been wrapped up in her career, and suddenly, that was gone. For the first few months, Sarah struggled. She'd wake up late, spend hours watching TV, and feel increasingly isolated. Her daughter, worried about her mum's sudden change, suggested she try something new, anything to get her out of the house. That's when Sarah stumbled upon a local community theatre group. They were holding auditions for a production of Our Town. Sarah had always loved the play, but had never had the courage to act. With some trepidation, she decided to audition. To her surprise, she got a small role. The rehearsals were challenging. Memorizing lines wasn't as easy as it used to be, but Sarah found herself energized in a way she hadn't felt in years. She made new friends of all ages, laughed more than she had in months, and discovered a passion she never knew she had. The night of the first performance, Sarah was terrified, but when she stepped on stage and delivered her lines, something magical happened. She felt alive, present, and filled with joy. The applause at the end of the show was exhilarating. Since then, Sarah has been in several more productions. She's taken classes in improvisation, joined a seniors acting group, and even written a one-act play of her own. She often says that retirement gave her the gift of time to discover a part of herself she never knew existed. Sarah's story reminds me that it's never too late to try something new, to push ourselves out of our comfort zones. Age isn't a barrier to new experiences. It's an invitation to explore parts of ourselves we may have neglected in our younger, busier years. 16. The power of intergenerational friendships. One of the most enriching experiences I've had in recent years is developing friendships with people of different generations. It started when I began volunteering at the local community center. I was teaching a basic computer skills class, mostly to other seniors like myself. But one day, a young college student named Jake showed up. Jake was taking a gap year and wanted to learn some office skills to help him find a part-time job. At first, I was a bit apprehensive. What could I, a 70-something retiree, possibly have in common with a 19-year-old? But as we worked together, I found myself enjoying our conversations immensely. Jake was curious about everything. He asked me about my experiences growing up, my career, my travels. In turn, he opened my eyes to the world of his generation, their hopes, fears, and the unique challenges they face. We'd often stay after class, just talking. Through Jake, I was introduced to some of his friends. Soon, I found myself part of a diverse group that met regularly for coffee. There was Jake and a couple of his college friends, myself and 2 other retirees from my computer class, and a few working professionals in their 30s and 40s who Jake had met through his part-time job. Our discussions were lively and eye-opening. We talked about everything from current events to personal experiences. I found that the younger members of the group kept me thinking fresh, challenging my long-held beliefs and introducing me to new ideas. In return, they seemed to value the perspective and life experience I could offer. These intergenerational friendships have been incredibly rewarding. They've kept me engaged with the world, helped me stay current, and given me a renewed sense of purpose. I feel like I'm not just watching the world change, I'm still a part of it. Moreover, these friendships have taught me that wisdom isn't the exclusive domain of the old, nor is energy the sole property of the young. We all have something valuable to offer each other, regardless of our age. So, my advice to anyone, young or old, is this. Don't limit your friendships to people your own age. There's so much to be gained from connecting with people at different stages of life. It keeps you young at heart, broadens your perspective, and reminds you that we're all in this journey of life together, no matter when we started it.